Fan service in gaming is a sure way to capture players' attention, but it's not enough to keep it. So fan service games have to also work hard at providing you with good gameplay, compelling characters, and story. With that being said, here are 10 fan service games that I think are great and fun to play. Let's get started. 10. Demon Roots. Demon Roots is a Japanese RPG that has you playing as a demon in a classic humans versus demons tale. As you progress through the story, you team up with oppressed peoples from both races and uncover the great inequalities plaguing the continent. The story is surprisingly the game's strongest suit. You step into the shoes of Death Polka, a demon thrust into a complex world full of political intrigue and societal upheaval. This game is not afraid to explore dark themes such as oppression, slavery, and the cyclical nature of violence. But don't worry, the story also balances out fantastically with moments filled with hope, camaraderie, and even humor. As for the gameplay, you get the traditional JRPG experience, with turn-based combat and exploration. While the combat is not revolutionary, it is well balanced and satisfying. With all these pros I just listed, I think it's important to mention yet another one. If you aren't 100% sure of the fan service cutscenes, you can always skip them. Some can be quite detailed. 9. Tales of Berseria. Tales of Berseria was meant to be the Tales of series' return to greatness. In some aspects, it actually is a return to form. The combat system remains strong, and Berseria's storyline is far better than its predecessors. But one look at the protagonist's costume, and most people are going to look the other way. Not us though. I mean, sure, it would make sense for Velvet to change out of her sexy prisoner tatters. They can hardly be called clothes once she's free, but where's the fun in that? Maybe the skimpy outfit gives her more freedom to move and fight. Who knows? But jokes aside, Berseria's greatest strength lies in its ability to tell a different story from those of its predecessors. Instead of the cheery, can-do attitude you've come to expect from the series, Berseria fully explores the darkest parts of the human heart. Velvet drives the plot forward with her unquenchable thirst for vengeance on the man who took everything from her. While Berseria flips the script on Tales' normally sunshine-filled stories, the brawler-inspired combat stays pretty much the same, with a few welcome tweaks that make it feel smooth and responsive. All that and a plethora of costume DLCs makes Tales of Berseria a great fan-service game. 8. Moero Chronicle. Moero Chronicle doesn't try to be anything more than what it is, a basic RPG with a huge harem. The protagonist, Xenox, goes around to different dungeons recruiting women who fight in his place. This game doesn't hold anything back. The basic story is about the panties of light and the bra of darkness being stolen, with the hero having to go get them back. Along the way, there's plenty of sexual innuendo, and in fights the hero's party members actually help beat the clothes off the monster girls until they surrender. If this game spent as much time on making the game good as it did on figuring out how the fan service makes sense, it might be a cult classic title. 7. Criminal Girls Invite Only. Despite this being a fan service game, many players have actually ended up praising its combat system. What made things even more interesting was when a fight started and the one girl that you'd need for battle, because she had the most powerful skills, wouldn't cooperate with you because she was annoyed. Try working your way out of that now. The premise of this PS Vita game was also fresh and interesting, as you play as a male warden in hell and have to help a group of 7 girls to rehabilitate themselves and eventually leave the underworld. However, when it comes to the fan service parts of this game, many scenes were either censored, changed, or completely removed, depending on where in the world you're from. However, the good news is that modders added all that back in for players. 6. Knights of Azure 2 Bride of the New Moon. In this game, you play as a holy knight named Aluce, who joins up with her childhood friends Liliana and Ruinhide as part of an apocalyptic cycle of murder and sacrifice. Aluce and Ruinhide are separated from Liliana, and you spend most of the game trying to get the trio back together. The majority of the gameplay revolves around real-time combat, where Aluce fights alongside a team of companions. The player gets to choose which companions to fight alongside them, as each one has different abilities, so depending on your strategy, you might end up with a different team than other players. The combat is quite diversified, with Aluce being able to utilize both the powers of her companions as well as an array of melee weapons. When it all comes together in a fight, it is quite a sight to behold. However, the fact that the combat and story itself is somewhat interesting is often overshadowed by all the constant fan service. But there is a decent story in there that could be a wonderful narrative about the power of close female friendship, and jiggly breasts. The combat is pretty good too, and all the companions you encounter throughout the game have an affinity gauge, which is increased every time you have a homoerotic moment with your current companion. I say homoerotic because, well, you'll be hard-pressed to find a male in this game. But if that doesn't bother you, then Knights of Azure 2 can be a lot of fun. And if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to let me know by hitting that like button. 5. BloodRayne Revamped. BloodRayne begins humbly, with Rain and her hot Asian girlfriend Mince on a job in Louisiana Bayou, circa 1933. It was meant to be a basic investigation assignment that revolved around the appearance of a terrible disease that horribly deforms its hosts. Naturally, things go south and Rain finds herself in a battle with a huge, abominable creature. And from there on, it picks up, in terms of action. The story's very thin and is merely a framework for the bloody action. BloodRayne is like an exploitation movie from the 70s in this regard. It has a sexy hook with promises of gratuitous violence, and it delivers. There's also a lot of dismemberment, and Rain frequently makes pleasurable moaning sounds as she drains her victims of blood for health. The way she locks her legs around her prey is also very suggestive. If gratuitous violence, gore, and sexy dampiers dressed in tight-fitting clothes is what you're after, then this is the perfect game for you. 4. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I can't really talk about fanservice games without mentioning this one. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is dense, rewarding, and confident in the tale it's telling. The well-paced and intriguing storyline is punctuated by satisfying character moments and thrilling battles. And of course, there is the beach episode, where you get to see all the swimsuits. The fun part is that once you finish the story, you can always go back there, and even wear the swimsuits in other areas than the beach. So there's that. 3. Lollipop Chainsaw RePop. Lollipop Chainsaw RePop was released on 12th of September 2024 to mostly positive fan reviews, most agreeing that the game is fun, and more importantly, that it captures some of that old magic. At its core, that old magic I just mentioned is the blood and gore fest that this zombie game is, combined with its hypersexualized protagonist. Just like in the original, Juliet Starling is ready to hunt zombies, while you, the player, can take a peek up her skirt and even get an achievement trophy for that. It's fun, and what makes it even better is that Lollipop Chainsaw is the type of game that doesn't need to take itself too seriously to please gamers. It's got action, rhinestoned chainsaws, a decapitated head as a sidekick, and lots of blood. What more could one ask for? 2. Bayonetta. With a posh British accent, librarian glasses and skimpy outfits, Bayonetta seems to be the whole package, visually speaking. The fact that she also is a fearless badass is just an added bonus. What separates this title from others on the list is the fact that it doesn't have to rely heavily on sexualizing the protagonist in order to attract players. I mean, Bayonetta looks a certain way and has certain skimpy outfits, but make no mistake, she's a badass. She is intimidating and fearless. When you combine a great character like her with stylish combat, great gameplay mechanics, and a good story, it's a no-brainer that this franchise is doing so well. In fact, the game constantly encourages its players to try and dispatch enemies in as much flair and style as possible. With great flashy combat, good mechanics, an interesting story, and fan service, Bayonetta really is the whole package. 1. Stellar Blade. Stellar Blade game director Hyung Tae Kim has said that they have put more attention into the detail of the character's back, since that's what players will mostly see while in-game. But he had also claimed that he personally prefers seeing a better-looking character when playing a game because, after all, this is an important part of the entertainment and appeal of a video game. Eve's outfits are ridiculous and hilarious because the story is played completely straight. The characters have these solemn, dead-serious conversations with each other, all while Eve is practically naked, with the game's goofy jiggle physics making her breasts bounce around in an exaggerated manner with every slight movement. Battles that have the fate of the world at their stake have the option to be fought in a skirt that flies up when Eve's running, for no other reason than to show the player her backside. It might bother some people, but most will find the gratuitous fan service so over the top that it becomes funny. But despite the jiggly stuff and skimpy outfits, Stellar Blade is an amazing game, with great combat, an interesting story, and plenty of memorable boss fights. What other fan service game have you enjoyed recently? Let me know your favourites in the comments section below, and if you enjoy gaming content and want more, be sure to check out the videos linked on screen.